Hey, be sure to visit my website, saracarter.com, for all the latest reporting and stories. Today is a very important story, and one that I know you are going to want to hear because it affects every single one of us and our children and our country and the future of our country. I will be joined today by my good friend and former agent in charge of the DEA, Derek Maltz. We will be talking about his recent trip to Philadelphia. You will not want to miss this. The drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine and crack and what it is doing to our country like we have never seen before, folks. This isn't about addiction solely. This is about enemies of our nation poisoning and killing us. You don't want to miss this. You won't believe this. This is information you're not going to hear anywhere else. You're going to hear it here on the Sara Carter Show. Why? Because we are not afraid to tackle the truth, tell the truth, and hold those accountable that are targeting our nation and targeting our families. Just wait until you hear Derek Maltz. Just wait. This man is he was the top dog, right? At the DEA, ran all kinds of operations, exposed what Hamas, Hezbollah was doing in the United States, how they were working with the drug cartels under Operation Cassandra. He exposed what China is doing. He's working now to save the lives of your children, my children. And I will do everything I can to help support him in that. As we are being poisoned, because why? Our border is wide open. I've got Derek Maltz on, and I tell you, this is a man who is truly a saint. He is working every single day, even on his own free time, taking time from his family and everything, to saving lives in our country and to warning people on multiple levels, not just the mothers and fathers, which and the children, which are the most important, but government officials holding them accountable, saying, hey, you need to pay attention to what's happening to our nation, because we have an enemy, and that enemy is watching us and targeting our children. And I'm not going to let it happen anymore. Derek Maltz was a special agent in charge with the United States Department of Justice. He worked in their Special Operations Division. That's amazing. For more than 10 years. He played a vital role in developing and implementing the DOJ's nationwide deconfliction program, and he was responsible for coordinating multi-agency efforts that resulted in the capture of the Sinaloa cartel kingpin, El Chapo Guzman. Nobody like him in the world. I'm so happy to have you on the show today, Derek, under these terrible circumstances, actually, because I know what we're going to talk about is heavy. I know it's going to be eye-opening to many of the listeners out there, many of you who haven't had a chance to hear Derek speak before. So first, I just want to thank you, Derek, for being on the show and being willing to tell the truth about what is happening in our nation and about the, I think, the extraordinary war we are in against I would say against enemy states like China and others, and even against our own government that refuses to address this crisis. And I believe it's getting out of hand. And that is the deaths of our children due to poison pills on our streets and a chaotic border that is making it far worse. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
You know, I want to start off at the top. You and I were talking just beforehand, and I tell you, everyone, I could talk to Derek for weeks on end. I mean, we could just keep talking because we have so much similarity invested in what we care about here, and that is our nation. Derek, you worked for Special Operations Division for more than 10 years. You held the position as chief of the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, which is the oldest and largest drug task force in America. Talk to me a little bit about, now you're retired, but you are still working and still fighting the fight with everyone. Tell me about what is happening now on the streets. In a general sense, let people know what we are up against right now.
Okay, Sarah. So the Mexican cartels are working closely with the Chinese criminal organizations, flooding the streets with poisonous fentanyl, not just in pills, but mixed in with cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and even marijuana. Also, they are bombing the country with massive amounts of methamphetamine as well, so we can't forget about that. And one of the most important things I'm going to say today is that everything we talk about, it's not a red or a blue issue. It's red, white, and blue because it's impacting all Americans. It's not about politics because the bottom line is people from all socioeconomic classes, races, and colors, they're all being impacted. So what we have is the country is being flooded with these poisonous substances coming out of these filthy labs in Mexico, and it's being fueled by the chemicals coming from China, the precursor chemicals. You know, as Congressman McCall recently stated, that this is a great foreign policy for China to send fentanyl into America. The cartels are the enemy of our children. They are basically taking advantage of the weak security at the border and the vulnerabilities. They are operating like a global terrorist organization. They're killing more Americans than any terrorist organization that I'm aware of in the history of this country. We're losing 9,000 Americans a month. Every 5 minutes, we're losing somebody. Families are waking up devastated every single day. Some kids as young as 13 years old, they go up to the room. The parent finds the kid blue, dead in the bedroom because they don't know what they're taking. So we're not talking about a drug overdose crisis. We're talking about a poisoning crisis of American people from our adversaries around the world. But Sarah, the other thing that people don't realize is that the cartels are a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, but right now they've employed a very strategic, creative, and deceptive marketing campaign geared towards the kids. So they've crossed the line now more than ever before. We have never seen this before. Right. And that's really, really important. The social media companies are enhancing the ability of these kids to get the drugs. The cartels are entering the kids' bedrooms. That's the bottom line, through the internet. And the other thing, Sarah, is we have pill production labs in America as well. So we have kids that don't want to go to work anymore, millennial kids, that are buying powder from these different, cartel reps in America. They bring the powder into their house. They buy pill machines online. They get the dyes. They get the coloring. And they make these pills to look just like Adderall, oxycodone, Percocet, Xanax. And they're deceiving the kids. And they're making a fortune.
Right.
They're making a fortune. So one example, one of these pill presses could, make 7,000 to 10,000 of these pills an hour times $20 a pill in the street. That's $140,000 an hour times 8 hours. So the profit potential is huge, but unfortunately, death and destruction all over the country.
Let me ask you this. You brought up a point that you and I for years have talked about, and I think people need to understand this, and I want to reinforce what Derek just said. Well, there were a lot of things that you said that I think are important here. One is that they go into your child's bedroom. So right now with social media, the internet, everything, the access, our iPhones, our Samsungs, whatever you got, whatever smartphone you have, whatever laptop you have, if your child is going up in their room and you have no idea what they are doing on that phone late at night or in that laptop, you don't have any idea what they're doing, but the drug cartels and every enemy of the United States has every idea of what they are doing, and they are intentionally doing it and trying to get your child. The big point that you made here, and I think we've got to pay attention to this, is that the Chinese are moving those precursor chemicals into Mexico. They're emboldening the Mexican drug cartels. The Mexican drug cartels are super powerful organizations now that are in cahoots with the Chinese. And the Chinese, this is my opinion, Derek, you don't have to agree with me on this. It is a proxy war against the United States using the drug cartels, using these cartels against our nation to destroy our people. And they are literally, it's the Trojan horse. They are literally in our country, killing our citizens, disabling our citizens. Because I'm just not thinking about, and I want you to answer this too, I'm not thinking about just the people that die. But what about the people that are injured and left maimed and injured forever because of these drug usage? Right?
Well, Sarah, first of all, I have been literally calling this a chemical weapon attack for many years. And you're right. It's part of unrestricted warfare out of China. the synthetic drug production and bombing in our cities has gone on a long time. The fentanyl deaths started around 2012, 2013 in America. That's when we started seeing the cartels' involvement with the with the Chinese criminals. But you got to remember, the Chinese chemical brokers have been involved in providing precursor chemicals to the Mexican cartels for many, many years. Remember in 2007, in Mexico City, they made the largest U.S. currency seizure ever, $207 million from the Chinese chemical broker who was bringing in the precursor chemicals to feed the beast in Mexico. And he was Chinese. He lived in Las Vegas. But when we saw that amount of money, we knew it was off the charts as far as the volume. And that's why right now they have such good relations with the Chinese transnational criminals, because they've been doing business forever. But here's the thing. The CCP in China, they want to destroy and destabilize this country. If they could kill our kids and our future generation, 100,000 or more a year, that's a great plan for them. And unfortunately, we're not paying attention. The White House isn't talking about it because of the politics around China and the wide open border. And so that's a big issue.
I mean, I get that, but we are literally, there is a war being waged on our nation. We would never be able to do this to Beijing, right? We would never be able to do the same type of unrestricted warfare to Russia. Why? Because they would never allow it to happen. So why is our government allowing this to happen? Why?
Well, the thing is that's the number one question I get from the families. As you know, Sarah, I work closely with the Lost Voices of Fentanyl and many of the groups, many of the family members. One of the first things I always hear is, how come nobody's talking about this? We had a rally, as you remember, last August in front of the Chinese embassy to try to get some awareness. And honestly, it didn't really take off too much. This year, we have a rally September 17th at the White House on the lawn, and families from around America are going to come. And they want to hold the government accountable, because nobody can understand why is it that the U.S. government, is not talking about this. And from the White House, like Sarah, I always like to show this stuff. This is 300 grams of salt. If this was 300 grams of fentanyl, this could kill 150,000 people potentially. This is not a lot of substance. So you tell me, when we've had a chemical that's made in labs like this to kill our citizens, and nobody's talking about it from the White House. The border czar was asked to fix the border, and we don't even hear from her. She doesn't go down to the border. And so the parents are getting angry over this. They want accountability. The DEA administrator, I have to give her compliments. She warned America back in September. They started the One Pill Can Kill campaign. They have tremendous
I thought that was brilliant. And I want to commend her for that too, because even during the Trump administration, I'm going to be straight right here, and it wasn't President Trump's fault. And know that a lot of people were pushing. We needed a better campaign, a campaign that focused on our kids, that said to them, like a PSA, like a public service announcement. Hey, one pill can kill. That's brilliant, because now kids get this idea that it's Russian roulette. You talked about Chinese labs. Talk a little bit about what you know about Wuhan Laboratory and what it, or Wuhan in general, and what was going on in that respect with these chemicals, with this fentanyl, with these pills.
Well, back in the day, 2008, 2009, we started seeing mass amounts of synthetic cannabinoids and cathinones, K2 spice, bath salts that were inundating our cities. And we started seeing, incredible emergency room calls, admissions. We started seeing, respiratory issues, deaths, and no one knew what it was. But it was these chemical substances made in these labs, the Wuhan-style labs, and some labs along the river. We sent informants from the DEA into China. We filmed in these labs this production process. They have so many chemical companies in China. So over time, they switched from those synthetic drugs to other synthetic drugs like fentanyl. And we started seeing this explosion of deaths with fentanyl. We had an operation in 2014. We briefed former Attorney General Holder, called Operation Deadly Merchant. That's because we started seeing so many deaths as the Chinese were working with the Mexican cartels and the Dominican distributors all over America. And then it just started exploding. That's why we started seeing the deaths off the charts. But China, like you said, Sarah, they now are using the Mexican cartels as a proxy to do the dirty work, just like Iran uses Hezbollah as a proxy to do their dirty work.
And so you would know that. You would know that because you were working on Project Cassandra, which was a huge operation run by the DOJ under the Obama administration that you were a part of to target Hezbollah. Talk a little bit about that so people get an idea, Derek, of who you are. Because it's amazing. Your career is just literally amazing when you think about it. You can see all of these connections because of what
my father was a DEA executive. He got me in this business, thank God, as a young kid. But I spent 28 years. But the last 10 years, I got to run the special operations divisions of the DEA. We had 30 agencies there, intel community. We had obviously DOD, Southern Command, Special Operations Command, Northern Command, and we were collecting a lot of intelligence and then synchronizing the efforts around the world. But during my time, we started seeing this incredible trade-based money laundering scheme where Hezbollah was working closely with the Los Zetas cartel and other cartels in Mexico, doing hundreds of millions of dollars every month in drug operations around the world, bringing ton quantities out of South America into West Africa, and then distributing cocaine all over the world and making millions and millions of dollars. So we exposed Hezbollah's link to the drug cartels. And so the drug cartels are making billions of dollars, and now more than ever because they have the migrant smuggling and the human smuggling business off the charts because they're operating with impunity, because our government is not shutting it down. And so now the cartels are making money, the terrorists are making money. But unfortunately, as you know, Sarah, with all the gotaways that are coming into our country, we have terrorists in this country right now. And I hope to God they're not plotting something on our country, but you never know because we don't know where they are. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are, what they're doing. It's unbelievable. But
I feel like we're really being targeted on all fronts, and that our government is asleep at the wheel. The only responsibility that President Joe Biden and his administration truly have for the American people, Derek, is to ensure our safety. And I feel that this administration is not only asleep at the wheel, they are driving the truck, the 18-wheeler, to our destruction.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. But, you got to look at little things like this, Sarah. The DEA administrator put out that last year they seized over 20 million of these fake pills and 15,000 pounds of fentanyl. That was enough, as she said, to kill every American. But more importantly, when the lab did an analysis of the pills, they determined that 40% of the pills that they analyzed had a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl. So that means the million pill seizure they made in Los Angeles last week, or actually was made early July, right after 4th of July weekend on a search warrant. But 1 million pills could potentially have killed 400,000 people if it hit the streets. So for those that say that law enforcement is not effective and they're not doing a job, what about the millions of people that they're saving lives every day they make these seizures, right? And so
that's what's amazing to me. And I want to be short because I agree with Derek here. Law enforcement, our Border Patrol agents, our DEA agents, our ICE officers, everybody who works is working to protect our country, our military, they're doing the job. They're doing the job even with their hands tied behind their backs, even when resources are tight, even when people are bad-mouthing them. They are out there every single day putting their lives on the line. And they've got families. They want to come home at the end of the day. They want to protect their children and their children's friends. So I agree with you on that. What makes me angry is when you have an executive branch like this in any political party. I don't care if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, that does not protect the American people and tell the truth for political reasons or because they're buddying and lining their pockets with Chinese money. Period. Right.
And going back to the Border Patrol, let's emphasize something. Last year, they seized 11.2 thousand pounds of fentanyl, and they seized over 190,000 pounds of meth. So they're working every day despite, like you said, no support. And, you know, like their morale is very low now, but they still work hard to protect America. But can you imagine going to work to do border security every day and keep America safe? And you're being asked to do migrant processing and babysitting and diaper changing all day? That's terrible. But they're still working hard and they're still doing a good job to keep Americans safe. But unfortunately, they're getting no support.
Well, they're working hard like you are. I mean, because even after your retirement, you have been an advisor to the presidents. You have worked with the DEA. You're continuing to work. And you were just actually out on the streets in Philadelphia. I was just stunned, Derek, when you sent me these videos. We have 2 videos from your trip. This is shocking footage of like just open air drug use. It doesn't even look like our nation anymore. It appears to be, and I've seen this myself in other cities, but it appears to be like The Walking Dead. I want you to take a look at this, the clip that you sent me, and then if you can respond to what you're seeing here.
Look at that there. She just passed out with the needle right there. Just open air.
Right in her neck. She's got the needle in the arm.
Picking up the spot. Wow. Shooting up right here on the street in her arm. You can see the needle hanging out of her arm.
But this was just hundreds of people lined up on the streets, all with needles in their hand. They were sticking needles in their neck, in their feet, in their ribs, in their every part of their body, their arms, they're underneath their arms. I never seen anything like it. I've been doing this business many years. I mean, I did a lot of heroin cases when I was in the DEA in New York in the task force.
You ever see this? Did you ever see this?
I've never, ever seen this in my life. I'm stunned. My life has been changed from this trip this week into Philadelphia, and the mayor should be ashamed. Mayor Kenny, who's celebrating, you know, with his assistant last year or whenever it was when they passed sanctuary city laws. But what about these poor people? We're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine and other parts of the world, which I understand. But what about these people that are desperately needing help on the streets all over the country?
I'm looking at this right now with you. I'm looking at this video. And for everyone who's just listening, we're going to have this up on YouTube. So you can go onto YouTube and see Derek's videos up there. These are videos that he filmed with a friend of his. I mean, just it is terrifying what I'm seeing. People getting needles in their necks. A young girl, what was she? She had the needle right there in her hand, didn't she? And she was holding it, trying to hide it.
Sarah, she was using a mirror and she was trying to make sure she can get the needle in the right spot in the neck. And I tried to film it, but there was a lot of people on the street, so we had to be careful.
How dangerous is this when you're out on the streets here in Philly?
It's called the Badlands for a reason. It's the Badlands of Kensington, Philadelphia. And I've watched stuff in this area for 20 years now, but nothing like this. I've never seen this in my life.
I've never seen that in my life either. We have one more clip. I want to play this other clip for you. And then I want you to respond after the clip plays. Could you guys go ahead and play that?
Right here in Kensington, you see them just sitting around, shooting up needles right on the street.
Open air. Passed out with needles in their arms. Passed out. Nobody's doing nothing about it.
Where's the mayor of Philadelphia?
Kensington Ave. This is the heart of Kensington. But that little scene over there is almost every quarter in this mile radius, east, west, north, and south. Almost every corner looks like that. He'll be in that position for a hour. He won't fall, though.
He will not fall, but he's all high on fentanyl.
Yep, and he can't stand up straight. I don't know what it does to your nerves or whatever. However, that's what part of the zombie effect, I guess.
It does look like zombie land. And, you know, it makes me want to cry because these are people's children. These aren't just junkies on the street. These were once young kids with big hopes and dreams and who have families and loved ones. And, you know, and it's spreading like a virus across our nation. And you're screaming off the mountaintops with these parents who have lost their kids and saying, wake up, America. Are people waking up?
Well, it appears that there's some movement in a positive direction. If you look recently, even in Congress, a bipartisan, first time that I'm aware of it, Lauren Boebert from Colorado, Tim Ryan from Ohio, have put forth the resolution to get fentanyl declared a weapon of mass destruction. And that's coming from the Families Against Fentanyl. Jimmy Rao, the founder, he lost his son in Ohio. And I got to tell you, it's really troubling when the families have to be the leaders. Like, as an example, Sarah, a lot of people don't know this, but, you know, there's statistics out there showing that the leading cause of death for people 18 to 45 was because of fentanyl. That came from not the CDC or the White House. That came from the Families Against Fentanyl that had to go through all the statistical data available from the CDC. And that's really troubling. It should be the government leading the efforts. These families got to have nonprofits. They're putting billboards up all over the country with their beautiful kids. They're making photo collages just to be able to show what's happening here. Isn't the government a little bit like behind in this? They should have been doing this, and they're not. It's really sad, and they're misleading the public because this is not an opioid overdose crisis. It's poisoning, like we said, and they're not doing the job by telling the public. There's no PSAs. Where's the role models and the professional athletes out there? Where's the primetime PSAs? You know, it's just disgusting.
It's disgusting because I feel as though there must be an enemy within allowing this to happen. Because if this was happening in your own home, and you're of right mind, you would do everything you can as a parent to protect your family, to keep the enemy out, to protect your children. But our own government's just not doing it. You know, Derek, you talked about the families and the families doing that. We had actually gone and testified, you and I, and as well as Heidi Riggs and others, Chris Farrell in Ohio. We actually testified before the Ohio legislature to declare the main drug cartels terrorist organizations. There was a lot of controversy behind that. I know, going all the way up to the DEA, but we wanted it to be out there. We wanted it to be a symbolic as well as a tangible gesture. Could talk a little bit about that. And I mean, I guess Ohio passed it and symbolically, but you know, in Washington, DC, there's a lot of, they're very tentative about doing that.
Right. So first, like, just remember, it was a bipartisan, almost unanimous vote in both the House and the Senate in Ohio, which shocked me because I didn't expect that kind of vote. But anyway, the thing is that President Trump wanted to declare the cartels terrorists. He clearly saw it. The man had great instinct and he understood national security
Absolutely.
issues. But all the bureaucrats in Washington, a lot of them, including, if you remember, when President Trump wanted to send missiles into the drug labs, former acting Defense Secretary Esper, you know, convinced them against it. Just like State Department and these other agency heads, they were against it for political reasons. But why aren't they not looking out for those dead kids, 13, 14, 15?
Right.
Like, what about our future? Who's going to be in the military? Who's going to be the doctors, the lawyers, the bus drivers, school teachers if we lose all these kids? So why don't they care?
Lowest recruitment, by the way, right now in the U.S. military. They do not have enough recruits. We're seeing what's happening to our children. We're seeing what's happening to our nation. And like I tell people, I've spoken to people before. I think I brought up this analogy to you once, Derek. But I say, like, if you knew right now, if somebody called your house and said, hey, there is a child predator outside your kid's elementary school or middle school, and they are waiting to get your kid. They are just there with the intention of getting your kid. What would you do? Parents all tell me at meetings, I would go after them. I would kick the living shit out of them. I would beat them up. I would destroy them. I would kill them. I'm like, every single day, those predators are around your school. And if you think it's just because it's drugs and it's not the 1980s, folks. It's not about just giving your, selling some, marijuana to your kid, some hashish. This is about literally warfare on your children. And one pill will take your child's life. That's it.
Right. And, what I found to be really interesting, you speak about marijuana. Again, if you look at some of the data coming out now, right. The Wall Street Journal just had a story about how there's obsessive marijuana users. A lot of these school shooters, or all of these school shooters, were high on this very pure marijuana that's being sold now. And by the way, for those that don't know this, very important fact, the Chinese business owners that are here in America taking these drug dollars, they're buying real estate and houses, and they're making state-of-the-art indoor grow operations, and they're selling very pure, 24% THC marijuana across the country. And by the way, Sarah, you know this, but the public doesn't realize it. The Chinese are now facilitating all the money laundering for the Mexican cartels through encrypted apps and Chinese banking accounts. And they're using these kids that are here in America, these Chinese nationals on student visas to pick up the drug dollars, which is really, really unbelievable. We've never saw that in the past.
I know. So you're a federal agent. You've worked on highly classified cases with the Department of Justice. When you are looking at this, Derek, when you see this happening, I have to imagine that somewhere at the CIA, there's a group, focused on this. At the DEA, there's a group, there's a joint task force, and they've got to be sitting there writing reports saying, holy shit, we are literally at war in a totally different way now than we've ever seen. Like, we are being targeted by China, by Russia, by North Korea, whatever it is. Wherever those connections are, but let's just stick with China. Why are we not doing anything about this? I mean, why are we allowing the Chinese to buy up land, to poison our kids? And I'm talking about the Chinese government, to do things in their own country that by principle we don't even agree with. Sterilizing Uyghurs, killing people for political purposes, running a credit system across China, and by the way, trying to change the geopolitical system of the world. Why are we allowing this to happen?
Great questions. I don't have the answer. It's mind-boggling to me because I thought the first job of the government is to protect American citizens. And this is pretty clear. I mean, just remember in Hartford, Connecticut, early in the year, it was an actual hazmat scene in the middle school because a 13-year-old kid brought 40 bags of fentanyl into school. He died. And then at his house, they found 100 bags of fentanyl. But the thing is, it's like there's close alignment now between these Chinese operatives and the cartels. And remember this, if China's providing the money laundering services and the chemicals, if that was shut down tomorrow, then the cartels can't produce these chemical weapons in their labs in Mexico. So the other question is, why would the U.S. government sit back and not go after those labs in Mexico? Because we know the Mexican cartels are operating like we've never seen before, and the Mexican government, so corrupt that they are, they're not attacking those labs like they should be doing. And
no, they're owned. They're owned. They're owned by the cartels now, and some of our people are getting owned by the cartels. I have to believe that.
Sarah, they're putting out false propaganda in the news about hitting this and hitting that. The DEA was doing tremendous work with the Mexicans for years. Now their hands are tied. They can't really operate down there. They have all these new processes and procedures. They can't go out like they used to. They're being followed, and it's a mess in Mexico. And now there's like a little political war between the Mexican president and the U.S. on the drug crisis, like you saw last week. Thank God RCQ has been arrested. He's a murderer, he's a tortured Kiki Camarena in 1985. I'm glad he was arrested, but you know what? It's almost like a political thing.
Yeah, it's like a stunt. It's like we threw you a bone. It's like RCQ's like an old dude now. Like I would have loved to have seen him like killed and slaughtered when he did that, when he tortured Enrique Camarena. Just explain really quickly. Enrique Camarena, the first DEA agent to be killed during an operation in Mexico, undercover operation in the 1980s, right? Explain a little bit about that for our listeners.
1985, Kiki Camarena was a hero. He was very brave, and he was going after the Guadalajara cartel, and he was going after their massive marijuana business at the time. And he crossed the line with RCQ, okay? And this guy was a animal, right? For lack of better terms. And so they captured Kiki, they set him up, they tortured him for a while in a location, and then they killed him. And his poor family had to live with this since 1985. They eventually arrested him in Mexico, but then he was released on some technicalities in the Mexican court. He's been a leader in the cartels forever. He's been responsible for, sending poison into our country forever. They finally arrested him like last week or whenever it was, and hopefully we'll get him back in American court. But yes, it's a big moment, and DEA is ecstatic. We're all happy. We're proud of the Mexican Marines. Right. By the way, they lost 14 in their operation when the helicopter crashed after the operation was done. But the reality is that we got to go after Chapo Guzman's sons. They're young. They're the ones using the social media. We got to go after the other cartel, Jalisco cartel. Okay, they're out there, and they're the ones bombing our country right now. Okay, RCQ's been on the run for many years.
And what about Generación? What about Nuevo Generación? I mean, and El Menche and all of these different guys that are rising to power. I mean, I think sometimes they're done with the old guy. I mean, I think there's like some kind of a deal, like where they're like, okay, you lived your 100%. Life. Yeah, here you go. Here's a bone. And now we're taking over. Right?
Right. Exactly. You're 100% right. I couldn't have said it better, Sarah. It's kind of like a game that they play, just like this public relations stunt that they're coming out of Mexico. They're making so much money. These Mexican government leaders are getting paid off. Remember, look at Central America. Like, our government wants to keep giving them more money. We have the former president right now was just extradited. He's in jail in New York. His brother, Tony Hernandez, was convicted with 185 ton cocaine conspiracy with the Sinaloa cartel and Chapo. The head of the anti-narcotics police force is in jail. We previously arrested the defense minister, Salvatore Cienfuegos, and had him in custody until they let him go back. We have Garcia Luna in jail for he was the head of public security. There's corruption everywhere. The economy's booming down there because of the drug cartels. So they don't want to stop the business. But our State Department wants to say, this is the greatest trading partner. But what about our kids?
What about our kids? What about our kids? What about what's happening across the board in our hemisphere? I mean, we're going to lose. We have so much potential in the Western Hemisphere to be the greatest geopolitical giant on planet Earth. We've got resources. We've got oil and vacation and southern hotspots and except what do we not have going for us? Any kind of leadership, any kind of common sense or sensibility. We've got countries under the thumb of the drug cartel. And by the way, I still believe, Derek, that some of the people here on our side of the border are under the thumb of the drug cartel, because I always find it very difficult to believe that it's just so easy to ignore for so many of them. There's money, there's favoritism, there's like, don't tread on my turf and you'll get some of this, even if it's not directly drug related on the outside. One of the last questions I want to ask you, and it's because I know I told you guys I could talk to Derek forever. This is probably going to be the whole podcast because I could just talk to him forever. Is the supply chain. And I don't think people have a really good idea of how a drug supply chain works. I talk about transient routes and how, the cartels fight over, special areas of the border. They control areas of the border to move their supplies in. But from the beginning to the end, can you kind of give like a brief synopsis of what a supply chain is and then how it's distributed across, I know I'm asking a big question, across the United States?
Well, for one, when we talk about fentanyl and meth, because those are the two most important drugs to talk about now, the chemicals, the precursor chemicals are coming out of Asia, predominantly China, right? China's producing these chemicals in their labs all over the place, and they have containers. They ship the containers to the ports in Mexico. The ports are so corrupt, and the cartels own the ports, that the chemicals come in with no problem. They go to the lab operations. They have industrial-sized labs. Like for meth, they're producing ton quantities every couple of days because they have a steady supply of the precursors. They have the chemists down there. They have all the operatives they need. They make the stuff, and then they blitz the border. They get their routes into California, into Arizona, and into Texas. And what they do is they use these transportation networks, tractor trailers. They use their tunnel systems. They use rail cars. They actually have incredible hidden compartments in all these different conveyances. They use airport security. They infiltrate the airports. They use, cargo jets. They use, the commercial airlines. They use private planes. They will do anything possible to get this stuff. They use cars. They use couriers. Once it gets in, they go to hub cities like Los Angeles or Phoenix, Arizona, or, you know, in Texas and Houston. And then they'll stockpile stuff and they'll run it up with these tractor trailers to Chicago, through Denver. They'll go to Denver. They'll go up the West Coast into Washington State, up into Canada. They'll take it across to Atlanta, which is a major hub on the East Coast. Then from Atlanta up the Northeast corridor into New York. So they have cartel operations all over America. In the old days, the cocaine was coming into Miami. Now Atlanta feeds Miami because it's all coming from the southwest border, from Mexico. And then when the drugs get in, they have their network of distributors. They push this stuff out. They'll bring it into their little labs they have. Sometimes they'll make the pills here. Sometimes they have the pills already. And then they'll push the stuff out to the streets and they'll make a fortune. They'll collect the money. And now, instead of taking tractor trailers of cash, which they're probably still doing, we're just not seizing it like we used to, they're turning the money over to the Chinese operatives in America, these young kids who are taking the cash and getting the money laundered back to China. And then they do the trade-based money laundering where they buy consumer goods in China and they ship the goods down to Mexico and they sell the goods in the flea markets and the fairs. And then the drug traffickers get paid instantly. And so they have a very, very complex, sophisticated scheme going, very difficult to penetrate. They're using WeChat. They're using Chinese banking apps. They're not putting the large sums of cash in the U.S. banks like they used to, which was much easier to track. But another thing, too, Sarah, the outdated laws in America on communication exploitation, when they're using encrypted apps that are made all over the world, U.S. law enforcement, even when they have a court order, they have a difficult time, tracking and infiltrating these criminal networks. So the bad guys take complete advantage of not only the weak border, okay, but they take complete advantage of the vulnerabilities in our, investigative techniques as well. So it's an absolute nightmare. I could go on all day and get into the weeds of it, but they are very complex, very sophisticated, use all tools available to them. They don't have a bureaucracy. They don't have any resource constraints. They don't have any rules and attorneys overseeing what they do. And they certainly don't have the ACLU criticizing them like law enforcement has every day. Every time law enforcement comes up with an innovative program like license plate readers or these other programs, they get criticized, that they're infiltrating, public's rights to privacy and all this nonsense. The reality is law enforcement is trying to save Americans from the poison that's coming into our country at historic levels, and their hands are tied and they're not getting the support. And that's why the country's a mess. Just look over the last couple of weeks, right? They had like so many good seizures out just this week. Tijuana guy comes over the border, 250 pounds of fentanyl hidden in his gas tank. Then they had 150,000 pills seized in Colorado, 100,000 pills seized in L.A., 1 million pills seized early July in L.A. Historic level seizure in Colorado, 114 pounds by the Highway Patrol, another 200,000. Last year alone in New York City, the DEA reported a ton of fentanyl seized. The 12 million pills seized in Phoenix. I can go on and on, but let me just finish by saying this, because this is frightening right now. We are seeing more and more mass poisonings. Like in July, we had 7 people unresponsive in Tampa. In Gadsden County, Florida, over the 4th of July weekend, 9 dead. There was a equestrian park in North Carolina, 5 poisonings. 1 allegedly had fentanyl laced in a lollipop. Grand Rapids Hotel, 5 poisonings. Down in June, they had St. Paul, Minnesota. They had 9 poisonings out there. But here's one big one. I want to highlight this one. Will County, Illinois Coroner's Office, June 5th and June 6th, they had 10 dead in 24 hours and then 3 dead later in the week. And it goes on and on and on. But don't forget about Ohio State in May. Pre-med student, 21 years old, neuroscience, takes what she thinks is an Adderall pill. Right. And she died because the cartels are targeting the kids that take legitimate Adderall for ADD and focus disorders. It's a crisis like we've never seen, not being exaggerated, just need some action. We got to stop talking. We need action.
Absolutely, Derek. And that's why I have you on the show. And that's why I'm going to continue to bring you back. I want you to be able to give parents, though, and I'm going to put it up on the website again, where can parents go to help you and help the other parents fight back? I think we need to do it. I think we need to be proactive. We can't wait till our kids die. We can't wait till a kid ODs. We've got to do it right now in order to fight for our country and fight for our kids. What can they do?
Well, for one, they got to go on the DEA website, One Pill Can Kill, because there's tremendous resources. There's family fentanyl groups like Lost Voices of Fentanyl, the Fentanyl Coalition. There's other, advocates like Song for Charlie in California. You got Voices for Awareness in Colorado. There's so many great Americans that are establishing nonprofits, Demand Zero in Connecticut. And you have all these resources are available. They're putting out videos. They're putting out different brochures that you can bring to school. There's so many advocates out there, and the list can go on and on and on. But it's really sad because the government's not doing their job.
That's right. And guys, if you want to see the documentary we did in 2018, go to thedarkwire.com. That's thedarkwire.com to see Derek Maltz in the video that we did, documentary called Not in Vain, V-E-I-N, Not in Vain, V-E-I-N. And it's gotten so much worse since then, but I think it's a good overview of what we are dealing with right now. And that's why we're working on multiple projects to let the public know. Derek, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show. I take up all your time. I know I did, but I think this is the most important story of our time. I really do believe we are in a war right now, a proxy war, and our country is being poisoned. And this is not about addiction. This is about a battle and a war against our nation. So thank you for being with me.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work.